Ladies and gentlemen, coming to you from Champaign, Illinois, my name is William Berger, and this is the Practical Beginner Podcast, where we make the first step in your journey the easiest. Today, I have with me a gentleman by the name of Quinn O'Connor of SITKA Gear, here to give his story and, talk with us a little bit today. So, Quinn, how you doing, buddy?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So I'd like for you to please just give me your name, give me, what you've done, what you're about to do. Just give me a little background on yourself.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm Quinn O'Connor, 23 years old. I grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, a little bit north of Milwaukee, actually. Grew up there, moved out to Montana when I was 19. And I've been here ever since. I attended Montana State University. I studied political science and international business. When I wasn't in school, I was either ranching out east in Miles City, Montana, or I was doing wildfire. Did the whole wildfire gig for about 2 years. And at the end of this last fire season back in 2021, I knew I kind of needed to make a shift. I graduated college, fire season was coming to an end, and I was looking to transition. Luckily, SITKA Gear was hiring, and I threw in an application for a couple positions. I interviewed, and I got hired. I've been there ever since. I work in the wholesale department, so anytime you see a piece of SITKA equipment in like a Shields, a Cabela's, or any mom and pop shop, independent retailer, I typically work with the owners and help them out with whatever they need.
That's awesome. That's awesome, man. SITKA
Yeah.
Gear, I'll tell you, I mean, we're not sponsored by SITKA in any way, but I personally love your gear. I think I don't know, it's next level. And I think that's awesome that you represent them as well as you do.
Well, I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah, of course. So I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit more about your journey as a firefighter, a wildfire fighter at that. I mean, we've seen in the news the raging blazes in California and how that's affected so many people. Can you give me a little bit of your background as to what got you into firefighting? I mean, your international business, your firefighting, I mean, you are a man of many trades. So why don't you go a
Yeah.
little bit more in depth?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's funny. I remember pretty clearly. I was eating dinner in the kitchen of my college fraternity house, and my best friend Logan was like, "Hey, bro, like positions are opening up for wild and fire crews this next season. Like, I'm gonna apply. You should do it." And I was like, "That sounds pretty cool." And fast forward 9 months, he and I we're walking up to our first duty station together, and it was great. So I started out on a Type 6 engine. That's basically a big Dodge 5500 with a 350-gallon water tank on the back. And we use
Wow.
that primarily for just getting to incidents, honestly. Sometimes engines are great and you can actually utilize them for their capabilities. A lot of the times there's just a vehicle for us to get to the incident. From there, our vehicle is our feet. So I traveled all over Montana, Idaho, and Arizona primarily the last 2 years and fought wildfires there. I was attached to the Type 6 engine, and then I was also detailed out to a Bell 406 or 407 helicopter. And I did some helicopter crew member operations. And then I also was on a hand crew, a throw together crew on the Beaverhead Deer Lodge National Forest. And so it was super modular, right? The Forest Service does a great job sort of pulling resources and, taking, let's say, 4 engines and, scrapping 2 of those engines, taking the 8 guys off those 2 engines and either, putting them on a hand crew or, putting them on a helicopter assignment. So I really kind of did everything. And it was great. I loved it. I'd still be doing it. There are a few personal reasons why I had to leave. The first one being, it's a lot of risk for not a lot of money. The first thing I tell guys is if you're going to do it, you're not going to do it for the money. You're going to do it for the guys to the left and the right of you. It was never about the money for me. But when you graduate college and you're looking at those student loans, it puts a few things into perspective. But it was a blast, man. I really enjoyed it. You see nature for what it is, right? It's the most beautiful thing, you can experience, but it's also the most terrifying. Some of those big ponderosa pines chucking out 80-foot flame lengths and you're just hanging on for dear life. But
80
there's a rare
feet,
part. Oh yeah,
80 feet.
yeah,
Jesus H, man. That's
yeah.
crazy. Yeah, I mean, I get scared whenever we have bonfires in our backyard that are more than 6 feet high. I start getting like, okay, we better chill out, So, man, the stone's on you, man. I can't imagine. You're a better
It
man
is
than I.
it's funny, right? Like as scary as it is, and as intense as it might get, I mean, it just brings you back every time. You're like, oh, at the end of that shift, you're like, that was awesome. Like, can't wait to go back and do it again tomorrow.
Are you an adrenaline junkie? Like, do you like going out and like you do a lot of?
Unfortunately, yeah, yeah.
See, I'm in school to become an accountant, so I'm on like the other end of the spectrum there. So I admire that. I admire that, dude.
I admire the accounting. I'm not good with numbers, so.
Well, I'm not really great with numbers either, to tell you the truth. But you know what? It's a job and it's dependable and it's fine. But you know what? This podcasting thing. Getting into this is just something I can do kind of in my spare time, and it's something that I don't know. I'm passionate about it and gives me purpose. So
Sure. Yeah.
that's awesome. So you're in a helicopter, right? And you're fighting these fires. You're the guy, for our listeners that are ignorant, such as myself. Are you the guy that's like, are you throwing the white stuff that we see getting hurled out of like airplanes and stuff? Or what do you do from a helicopter?
No, so from a helicopter standpoint, I was either inserting with the helicopter, right? So they take three of us up at a time, and we would, typically offload three for initial attack activities. So helicopter would fly us up, drop us off at a safe location. Three of us would hop out, and we'd start getting to work, cutting out a saw line, sort of securing the area, cutting on a landing zone with chainsaws, stuff like that. And then I was also the ground contact for aerial support. So I would have my radio, and I would radio with Air Attack, which is a small kind of Cessna that would circle around the incident. So I'd maintain contact with the pilot in that. And then also the helicopters that are dropping retardant and water, on trees that are torching out, or just, really hot spots, and they're trying to cool down that part of the fire. So sort of multi-purpose. And then part of being a helicopter crew member is loading and assembling these cargo nets that helicopters can fly up. So if guys are kind of spiked out on this fire and it doesn't make sense for them to hike all the way down, they'll just coyote camp up there. And the helicopter crew will make a cargo net, throw in, a couple gallons of water, some MREs, whatever they might need, like fuel for their chainsaws, bar oil. And we are sort of the main resource that keeps those helicopters online.
Man, that's awesome. So was the process to become that firefighter? I mean, in my head, I imagine some badass Navy SEAL training, like where it's like you're in mountains and you're doing stuff. What was the process like to prepare? I mean, like you have to have some level of cardio and physical capacity to do something like that. I can't imagine it doesn't let just anyone in.
It's so to start, when I went, it was kind of the middle of COVID or right, kind of stuff was shutting down. So a lot of my training was online. I want to say it was maybe like 80 hours of online sort of learning, which, if you're a guy like me, you got your laptop here and you're watching Netflix over there. So I didn't really learn a whole lot. I didn't really learn a whole lot there, but then you show up and the first thing you do is a pack test. So you throw on a 45-pound weighted vest and you walk 3 miles. You can't run. You got to have one heel on the pavement at all times. And you just walk 3 miles, and you got the time to beat is 45 minutes. So you gotta, it's not difficult, but it's not easy. Right.
Gotcha.
It's the government. So, no one's going to pat you on the back for being first, but as long as you can, get that 45 minutes, you're good to go. You can retest, but as far as, getting qualified your first round, you really want to hit it. That sort of establishes some rapport with leadership, and then the rest of your team members, sort of keeps you accountable. And then from there, it's, we PT like crazy. We would be in the gym after work, doing some weight training. In the mornings, we'd go for a run anywhere, 3 to 7 miles. We'd do saw hikes where, you're in your boots and your greens, you grab your fire pack, which is about anywhere. Some guys really go bare bones and they're like 20 pounds. Other guys like me like to have everything. So my pack was like 45 pounds, and you'll throw on your pack, your chainsaw, and start walking. Squad boss, like they're typically pretty angry individuals, and they like to make us suffer in the beginning of the season. So yeah, it's nothing impossible, right? It's more so just a gut check, like, hey, do you really want to be here? Because if you don't, the door's right there. No one's going to beg you to be on a fire crew. Physical fitness is everything. If you're not in shape, you're not going to do well in an incident. At the end of the day, our legs are our vehicles. If we don't have those dialed, if we're not in shape and we can't move our bodies and the equipment that we bring up to an incident, we're no good. We're a liability. So we really drilled physical fitness. But again, it wasn't anything impossible, right? You get a guy who can bench press 300 pounds. That's great. But, can you hike with 45 pounds on your back for 3 hours, 4 hours, Yeah,
that functional fitness, man, I think people underestimate that. Did they have you on any kind of was there any special kind of a weight program, or what was the kind of regime that you guys would kind of follow, or regimen, I should say, not the regime, the regimen? Was it a lot of kettlebells? What, kind of go in depth on that?
Definitely. A lot of times it was, pretty much up to the individual. We would do like a team PT session in the morning, and that was a cross between like weight training, and then cardio. So like CrossFit workouts were a big thing that we did. And you do kind of in intervals too. So I'm trying to think of one we did pretty often. So we break off a lot of times into stations, and it's like one station is you got one guy in your team and he runs a quarter mile, runs back. And then while he's doing that, another guy's holding a 45-pound, plate or a bag over his head. And then, another guy's doing pull-ups, and you kind of, everyone's got to be moving at the same time, and then you race against the other team. Stuff like that's pretty fun. But mainly what we did was either, go for a couple mile run, come back, hit the weights. Squats were a big one. Kettlebells were also huge. But there really wasn't like a set regimen. Like, you've got to be able to do this in this amount of time. It was like, what can you do to move your body effectively, to maintain a good body weight, without burning yourself out. Like a lot of guys, they get too caught up in trying to be in shape too fast, right? So they'll come into the season maybe a little too heavy, maybe a little too skinny, and they'll just burn out in the first month trying to get back to a good weight. I'm always of the mindset of, can you be durable? Physical durability, I think, is more important than physical fitness. Can you take a punch and keep going? Can you, keep a consistent running pace for a couple miles, even though it sucks, but can you keep going? And then can you do it again tomorrow? When we're out there, on an assignment, you're out there for 14 days. So if you're burning yourself out by day 3, you've got 11 more. You got to find an excuse to push through. So for me, it was functionality, but also just being durable. Can you keep your knees in check? Can you keep your shoulders in check? At the end of the day, stretch out, do what you got to do, but be ready to get back at it the next day.
100%. Yeah, I see that in the gym a lot. People are ego lifting and
right.
You know them from a mile away. You can see it with the tank tops and the subtle glances in the mirror. You know what I mean? See if see how their triceps are looking.
Right.
Yeah. No, I totally hear you, and I think durability is a very underrated aspect of fitness. And so, I guess what kind of have you sustained any long-term injuries from firefighting? I mean, do you know anyone in your team that had struggled with any physical, not disability, but I don't know what the word is for that.
Injury.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Injury,
yeah.
I guess.
Injury is something we try to avoid, but it inevitably happens.
Yeah.
Coming into the season, our squad boss suffered a pretty major incident with a drip torch, and suffered 3rd-degree burns on 60% of his body. So he was out for the season. Stuff like that happens. Another guy got 2 hernias in one season. Trying to think what else, torn ACLs, MCLs, concussions. Someone's at the base of a tree and they're doing a back cut and they hammer a wedge in, there's branches up 40, 50 feet, and one of those gets lodged out and comes down at you, bonks you on the head or the back of the neck, you're down for the count. So stuff like that happens, right? Guys get injured, guys get injured, guys get killed. It happens. We try to mitigate it the best we can. We drill safety. We try to prevent it the best we can, but at the end of the day, you can only do so much, right? Nature's got a mind of its own. If you're at the wrong place at the wrong time, you're kind of at the mercy of nature. But if you can control certain variables, those chances of getting hurt, getting killed go way down. So it happens, but you just got to keep your head on a swivel.
So you've got this imminent threat, this imminent danger that you're facing every day as a firefighter. How did you find purpose and find an excuse, like you put it, to kind of keep going? I mean, you talk about that with the PT that you guys had to do. How did that translate over to firefighting? And then how did that translate over to your everyday life? Like, what are some lessons you learned from being a firefighter that you carry today? Like, how did that affect you?
Yeah. For me, like, once I saw my first wildfire, I was kind of hooked. I've always been drawn to doing certain things that people typically won't do or can't do. And for me, being a firefighter, number one, was really important. Having that purpose where, like, when something bad happens and there's a wildfire near a town, I want to be one of the guys that's going up there and helping out. I hate standing by and just watching something happen. I'm pretty restless, so I like to move. I like to see action. That was a big one. The other thing, a friend of mine, his name is Jerry, from Fire. He always said, be a professional. What can you do to separate yourself from other firefighters? And for me, it was be in the best shape possible, be the most knowledgeable, and also, be someone that isn't afraid to lead. I think a lot of people are afraid to actually step up and lead. But for me, I mean, that's how you test your knowledge, right? Is like, can you teach someone else what you know? And so for me, being restless and being professional, and wanting to see the action, but also like wanting to impart my knowledge on other people, that's kind of what kept me going back. In transitioning to the more, I guess, private sector. I don't even want to call it the private sector because I work for an awesome hunting company.
Right.
But leaving Fire and going to this job, I was kind of lost. Because the only real experience I'd had before that was like commercial tree work, ranching, and firefighting. And, I'd never been in an office for 8, 9, 10 hours a day. So it was pretty tough. But then, I was talking to the same guy, Jerry, and I was like, man, this is pretty difficult. Like, I don't know if I can do this. And he kind of gave me a little pep talk. He's like, be professional. Like, what can you do to separate yourself from other people in the office? Like, how are you going to build your personal brand? How are you going to, put your mark on something? And from that day forward, it's not so much as being in an office, right? Or, just showing up and working. It's like, what can you do to put your name on something that's going to separate it from other people's work? How can you be the best employee? How can you be the best team member? And just, showing up, being there for others, not so much being there for yourself, because you're always part of a team, but how can you show up and be the most effective member of an organization? I guess, long story short, that's what keeps me going.
That makes sense. So you thrive being a contributing member of a team. You thrive doing that. And I think that, man, I've met many military individuals that are active and retired. And now I'm meeting you and numerous first responders that are family friends. They all have, I think, that in common, is that they are willing to sacrifice the me for we. As corny as that is, I think that is such an underutilized aspect of business and sports. And everybody's focused on the individual, and nobody's focused on what the team is doing, And,
right. And you can have that lone wolf mentality, and, sure, some guys, can put on a good facade and, pretend it works for them. At the end of the day, lone wolves get killed by bigger wolves, right? Mm-hmm. The team is necessary. The good of the team is necessary. You don't get anything done without the team performing at its highest possible, degree. And that was the big thing with Fire. And that's the biggest thing I've ever learned was, what can I bring to my guys? What can I do for them so that makes their job easier, and we can get this done, and we can do it well, and we can put our name on a good product.
Well, I see what SITKA sees in you. I see what SITKA saw in you, rather, in the hiring process. That's invaluable, man. Like, I don't care who it is. I played collegiate sports, right? I was no star, I was no nothing, but I had met individuals in my journey that were far more talented and far more fortunate than I am. And something that I think really stuck out to me even about them was they weren't really exceptional individually. but they were so willing to take on the team mentality and fill their role that is what made them an exceptional individual, which is kind of counterintuitive, right? You embrace the we, you become a better me. You know, it's kind of a very, very strange concept, and it's very counterintuitive.
Right.
So that's very interesting to me that you have that same mindset and experience. That's very cool.
Well, thank you. Yeah, no, I'm glad you see it that way too.
Yeah, 100%. So now fast forward, you go from Montana State, you go to firefighting, and now you're at SITKA Gear. Can you go in depth on the process of you finding SITKA, and what has that job, how has that affected you as the person you are today? Because obviously you have numerous experiences of, you know, being a firefighter, et cetera, but talk to me more about your experience with SITKA.
Yeah. So I was actually, it's kind of a funny story. So when you're in fire, right, and if you're a seasonal firefighter, you have a certain number of hours that you're allowed to work. It's called a 1039. That just means I've got 1,039 hours that I can work that aren't overtime. So I think I was on like hour 1,000, and I was like, I got to figure something out, right? Because I got to leave. I wasn't living where I live now in Bozeman. I was living in a smaller town in Ennis, where we were based out of, and I was like, I got to move back either to Bozeman. I don't want to go back to Wisconsin, but that might be my only option. And so I've always been a SITKA user. I've experimented with KUIU and First Light and some of those other brands. And, I always came back to SITKA, but I was looking on their website, just kind of poking around, and I saw they had a careers page at the bottom, and I applied. I scrolled down to what jobs they had. Some of them weren't super applicable to me. I didn't really have a background in like sales operations, anything like accounting related. But they had, I think it was, if I remember correctly, customer service was one I applied to, and then dealer services, which is where I work now, was the other one I applied to. I didn't get the customer service gig, but I ended up getting a call back on the dealer services gig. And I interviewed, I think, twice for it, got the job. And I think within like 4 days, I had moved out of my place in Ennis back to Bozeman. Somehow found a room with some buddies I went to college with, and started working like that Monday. I think it was October, like mid to late October, I want to say it was, and been there ever since. And, kind of like I said before, it was sort of a culture shock to me, because I'd never spent, aside from school, I'd never spent more than 8, 9, 10 hours in a building. And I remember being there, I was like, a lot of the stuff I just don't know how to do. Like my technological prowess in terms of what I can do on a laptop or a computer is probably comparative to like a boomer, a 40, 50, 60 year old. It's my friends make fun of me for it all the time, but so it was a steep learning curve. Like I can hike all day, I can carry whatever you want, but as soon as you put me in front of a computer, I don't have the same degree of expertise. But it was great. I had really awesome leadership that kind of, guided me and gave me the tools I needed to succeed. And they kind of knew where I was coming from, and luckily they helped me out. It wasn't a cakewalk, obviously they're not going to do the work for me, but they gave me the tools that I needed to figure it out. So I'm forever thankful to, my team and my leadership. But yeah, been there since October. I love it. I work on the wholesale channel, and it's great.
I can't imagine. Yeah, that's awesome. That sounds, I think that, so since stepping out of being a firefighter and stepping out of your comfort zone, obviously, and you're familiar with SITKA, you're familiar with the brand, the functionality, all of that, but stepping out of your comfort zone from being a firefighter, essentially, like figuratively speaking, like an outside dog, right? And you're running and going and doing, and now you're an indoor dog, pretty much. Like, oh my God, that must have been such a psychological and a physical battle too.
It was tough. I've been kind of a gym rat for most of my adult life, and always doing something outside or being active, and came to SITKA. I was talking about this today with a buddy of mine at work. And I think, from like November to January, I didn't hit the gym. I wasn't running, maybe drinking one too many beers at night and packed on a little bit of a gut.
It happens, big dog. It happens.
Yeah. And I went home for Christmas, and I walked downstairs, and my mom was like, Jesus, dude, like, what do you got? What's going on? and some casual fat shaming went a long way, and I'm happy to report I'm back in the gym, and got a good routine going. But it was definitely difficult going, from what you said, like an outside dog to an inside dog.
Hey, you know what? You went from here to here, and now you're kind of finding your way.
Yeah, we're working the needle back forward.
There you go. You know what? You're moving that needle. That's all that matters, man.
Yeah.
So listen, I don't have a whole lot more for you. I think that I would like to close with what inspires you, who inspires you, and I guess we'll just kind of leave it at there.
Yeah. What inspires me? Jordan Peterson said this in his book. 12 Rules for Life. Don't compare yourself to who someone else is today. Compare yourself to who you were yesterday. I'm someone who a lot of times I get in this trap where I see things for face value. If I see someone driving a nicer, truck than me, or, I see someone who can, lift more weights than me, I'm like, why can't I do that? Like, I should be doing that. Like, why can't I make more money than them? And, you get yourself into such a crappy, headspace, and it's so not conducive to being successful. When you let go of that and instead you bring it back, to center, and you compare yourself to who you were yesterday. It's like, I got, 5 reps on bench press yesterday. Maybe today I'll get 6. I ran for 1.5 miles yesterday. Maybe I'll get 2 miles today. Instead of just, automatically just like working against yourself, flipping the equation and being like, what can I do today that I didn't do yesterday? What can I do today better that I didn't do yesterday? That's the big thing that motivates me. And as far as who motivates me, hands down, it's my dad. He's my best friend. He is the quintessential, man, as far as, being a father, being a husband, and being a friend. My dad checks all the boxes. He is, quite honestly, my best friend. I contribute all my success to him, and his work ethic. Without him, I wouldn't be working for SITKA. I wouldn't have been a firefighter. I wouldn't be in Montana. So those are the 2 big things for me.
And those are great 2 things, Quinn. Anyway, thank you everyone for listening. And Quinn, you're the man. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. This is awesome.
Oh, anytime, man. Talk to you soon. Okay. Bye-bye.
Yep. Sounds good.